Welcome to today's Student Success Initiative presentation on Plan B, focusing on the needs of nursing students, but in general, we will discuss some things that will assist allied health students when looking at programs. I'm going to go ahead and switch. Okay. I'm Sandra Partain. I'm the Program Coordinator for Science, Nursing, and Allied Health, and much of the information that we're going to cover today is based on the current 2013-2014 list of courses and requirements for nursing clinical students. So what do you do when you're not selected for nursing clinical? So we're going to, again, ultimately get to that type of information, but we're going to start out with some of the general requirements for our allied health programs to kind of help students understand why this might actually be a problem for them or something they have to consider that they may actually not be selected for clinicals. All of the clinical programs here at BIPSI have requirements. We call them prerequisites. So these are classes that you have to complete in order to what we call apply for a program. Some programs even have something what we call co-requisites, which are required courses, but they don't have to be completed in order for you to apply. For example, nursing has two co-requisites, and that would be humanities and Art 206. So you can take those at any time, before or after you apply, but you have to have them completed in order to graduate from nursing. Those are what we call co-requisites, and there are a number of programs that have co-requisites. They're listed as required, but there isn't necessarily a requirement to finish it before you apply to the program. Most of our programs here have an application process. What most students don't realize is every program has a unique process. So what you do for OTA is not necessarily what you do for nursing, or what you do for PTA is not necessarily what you do for respiratory therapy. So it's real important that when you're considering a program or a multiple list of programs, that you make sure you complete each program's application process because it's very unique. Okay, that information is located on the website. You can also contact the program directors to make sure for the program that you're wanting to apply to that you've completed everything that you needed to. On the website is where we have the deadlines, the forms that you may have to fill out and sign, and what the requirements are for completing the application for that particular program. The other thing that most students, again, are not aware of is it is a selective process. And that's for most of our programs here. Nursing, of course, being one of the primary ones. PTA is highly competitive. OTA is highly competitive. And what do I mean by that? Most students don't really figure out what that truly means. We take 40 students, nursing students each semester, but we may have 400 apply. So that means 360 of them will not get in. So with PTA, we tend to have 100, 150 students apply. We take 20. So that means there'll be 130 of students that don't get in. So those are the real numbers. And if you always wonder, well, how do you know that? If you looked at a schedule, a bulletin, and you look at Nursing 101, look at how many Nursing 101 classes you have available in a semester. You have to have Nursing 101 to be able to apply to nursing. We traditionally have 6 to 8 sections of 30 to 35 students. So that right there tells you who you're competing with in order to go into clinicals. So that gives you some numbers. We're not trying to scare you. We just want you to have a realistic idea and to be able to plan in case you have to go to a plan B. The other thing students may not realize is once you're selected, you will also have a background check performed, and you will also have to be drug screened at least one time. It is very sad to me when we have students go through all this work and then they have some type of problem that doesn't allow them to pass the drug screen. All that work goes to waste because you cannot move forward if you have a positive drug screen. Okay, as you can imagine, you're taking care of healthcare, of patients in healthcare, you're going to have access to medications. They're not going to allow you to have that access if you have a problem. So keep that in mind as well. So what do you do when you're not selected? And this could be a number of reasons. Again, it could be some of the ones that we just talked about. More often than not, it's because you did not rank at the top of that group of students who applied. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're a horrible student by any means, but when you're looking at 400 students, you have to, kind of float to the very top and be in that top 10%. That sometimes is a difficult thing depending on who is applying with you. You have to think about applying to clinicals kind of like applying for a job. It really depends on who else is applying with you. If everyone else who's applying for that job's not that qualified, well, then your chances are really, really good. But if everyone else who's applying is just as qualified, if not more qualified than you are, then your chances are not as good. There isn't a magic bullet for that. There's no way for us to know that. That's why we have deadlines for applications, so that once those applications come in, we can look at them and determine who is in that top group of students and who is not. Okay? So what do you do if you're not selected then? Most students are surprised when they're not selected. And again, as I kind of pointed out with the numbers, I'm hoping it's not a surprise. I don't want to discourage you, but it is a very real thing that can happen to students. There are a couple things that you might want to consider. Again, it depends on how dedicated or committed you were to the program that you were applying for. If you were really, your heart is set on being a nurse and you don't get selected, well then you really need to look at these options. Kind of figure out why you think you were not selected. Was it that your grades were not that good? And if that's the case, then I would encourage you to possibly go and take some of those classes over. The thing that you have to realize is with most of our allied health programs is that your science grades are weighted heavier than all the other courses. So it's wonderful that you made an A in English, and it is very important that you did that. However, it really hurts your grade point average even more when you make a C in anatomy and physiology, because we magnify that C, because that should be an area of strength for you, and it wasn't. So that really puts you at a disadvantage when you go into clinicals, because we will not reteach that material. We require those as prerequisites because we expect you to know that at a mastery level so we can build on that when you get to clinicals. So if you barely squeaked by, it's really not going to be a good thing for you. It's really going to be difficult. So consider taking those classes over. However, if you're on financial aid, that potentially can be a problem because financial aid does not pay for you to retake classes. If you're on VA benefits, it will not pay for you to take classes over again. If you pass it, even with a C, you basically are stuck with that grade unless you choose to pay out of pocket to take that class again, which is an option for you. Now, the other question that we often get when students do that is, oh, so it's going to erase my C. No, it doesn't erase your C. The better grade will go into the mix, pulling your overall grade point average up. So we actually will look at both attempts, the C and then hopefully the A, so that we can see that you've moved forward. What hurts students, I think, too, or frustrates students, too, is when they take the class over, they either make the same grade or they do worse. Don't take that option if you are not really planning to commit to do better, because all it's going to do is hurt you. It's going to make you spend more time, more money, and ultimately bring down your grade point average. So if you want to go that route, which is for many students a good thing, you just want to kind of be aware of some of the dangers of doing that. The other thing is that you might want to consider is just applying next year and just your application ultimately remaining the same. So all your courses that you took will be the same. You just want to apply again, and you're welcome to do that. It's kind of like I said, applying for a job. Sometimes it's just a mix of students that applied. You didn't happen to float to the top. But if you apply next time and the pool of students that's with you is not as strong, it's very likely that you will float to the top. Again, it's kind of a risk thing, though. It's kind of a gamble. There's no guarantees as far as that's concerned either. But basically what we're here to talk about today is developing a plan B. And again, a plan B is not, to me, saying I'm giving up on my plan A. I just hope that you have some way to kind of get back on your feet. It really disheartens me when students just throw the towel in and they just don't go to school anymore at all because they weren't able to do what their initial plan was. It's not uncommon that students apply to a clinical program and don't get in till the next second or third time that they try. It happens to medical school students all the time. So I don't want to, again, discourage you from trying, but again, be aware that there's a potential that you may have to try again. If you are going to take other classes outside what your current major is, it's going to probably require you to change your major, especially if you are on financial aid, okay? But I want you to be very careful on just kind of willy-nilly changing your major, and we'll talk about that, why that is in just a second. If you change your major, because we'll talk about what you could change to, it may help you be able to apply to more than one program. So you might be able to apply to respiratory therapy and nursing. So the next go around, you have another option. That's your plan B. So we're going to talk about, again, specifics on what courses that means you would take to move to those other courses, other programs, as well as some of the impact of what happens when you change your major. Before you change your major, I recommend you meet with an academic advisor. The more focused that advisor is, the better off for you, meaning that if you have narrowed it down to 3 other programs as your plan B, then only meet with those program advisors for those specific programs. I would recommend you go to the English department and go, I want to change my major, and then not really understand what that fully means. Okay? You're going to have to do some self-reflection and determine what it is that you really want to do and what you're willing to do as a plan B. If you get accepted into that other program, that means you're really going to have to go forward in that education process. When you meet with your program advisor, maybe you haven't quite nailed down what you want. You need to discuss some of your personal career goals. What is it about your current program that you're trying to go for? Is it that you really liked? Is it that you take care of patients? Is it that, for example, in OTA, you don't do a lot of blood, guts, and gore? If that's your focus, then you need to share that with them. It sounds really silly, but that'll help us direct you to other programs that are more like the one that you aren't getting into initially. Instead of, okay, you want to be an OTA, you don't like blood, guts, and gore, so let's put you in paramedic where all they deal with is blood, guts, and gore. So we want to make sure that your personal goals will match whatever career you have. You also want to, again, as I said, do some self-reflection, what you like and what you don't like. If you don't like working in small, tight spaces, then don't consider pharmacy tech as your option B, because they work in little bitty pharmacy areas. They don't go outside. They're not going from patient area to patient area. They're staying in one little locked in area. So you kind of want to know what you would like about your environment as well to help select the appropriate program that you want to act as your plan B. So I encourage you to look at other allied health careers, and not that you couldn't go into criminal justice, but to maintain as many courses that you've already taken to kind of reduce that transition time to another program. It's probably going to be the wisest thing is to move to another allied health program. Okay, so that's the only reason why we're kind of focusing in on that. But again, it doesn't mean exclusively you would have to do allied health. Be aware that when you change your major, financial aid has very strict rules. It's not anything about us, but they have what we call two resets of your financial aid, basically your major changes. Okay, so again, that's why I want you to be thoughtful when you change your major and just change it willy-nilly. Because if you go and change your major to general science, which probably is for many students the best option when they're not quite sure what they want to do as their plan B, then when you can continue taking classes under that particular option. And then if you get into OTA, nursing, PTA, then you change your major. You can apply under general science to any program here. But if you get accepted, at that point is when you would change. So you don't have to be listed as the major that you're applying to that program for. Does that make sense? So you don't have to be listed as a nursing major, but once you're accepted, you then have to change it because you can't graduate from a program that is not your major. And that's the reason you have to change it once you get accepted. Okay? But you can't, again, take phlebotomy classes if you're listed as criminal justice because financial aid won't pay for classes outside your major. So you kind of do want to have it kind of in the same family, so to speak. And that's why we're kind of spending some time today looking at specific classes for you to kind of gauge what would work best for you as your plan B. So definitely want to develop a plan, outline your options, and if you do this with your academic advisors, we traditionally come up with a plan. You take these classes in the spring and these classes in the summer. These will be the classes that you would take in the fall, or this is when you could apply to clinicals. So we really do want to give you a plan of action so you'll know what to do. You're not just kind of floundering each semester. Think about the benefits and the consequences of your decision. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. That's a physical principle, and that's very true. I oftentimes hear students go, well, I changed my major, financially said it was okay, so I'm good. You're good right now, but everything you do with your financial aid and your courses eventually will impact you some way. So be aware that money is not free. So if you burn up all your classes, use all your financial aid in one major, and then you change it to a completely different major, yes, financial aid said you can do that. But you're only allotted so much money. You're going to burn through that pot and not actually have enough left over to finish that second major. So you want to be very thoughtful about which classes you're taking and to be the ones that you need to complete your degree. Okay? All right, so we're going to look real quickly at the nursing prerequisites as well as the co-requisites. They're fairly generic. English 101, 102, Biology 230 and 230 lab. That's Anatomy, Physiology A. Part 1, developmental psychology. And the other thing I do kind of want to point out as we go through these classes, you'll notice that we have very specific classes listed. When we do that, that means that is the class that is required. On a number of occasions, I'll advise nursing students, they'll go, well, I have Psychology 201, which is intro. That's not the class that's required. In your mind, it might be the same, but I can guarantee the Board of Nursing does not feel that way. That is why they have told us your prerequisite is developmental psychology. So don't make those changes and think that it's okay, because there are very specific objectives that we have to meet with each of those classes in preparing you for something. So when we have a class listed, unless it's listed as an elective, that is the class that is required. It's not something that you can submit or change for your own ease. There's Math 102, which is college algebra. There's Biology 231 and 231 lab, that's A&P 2. Your Micro 201 and 201 lab. Math 114 is finite math. Your Humanities elective, that's elective. So that means you do have some wiggle room. You don't have to take History 101. It could be literature, but it has to be in that classification of humanities. What is unique for nursing is the class listed humanities, HMAN, is not an acceptable humanities elective. It has to be English, literature, religion, or foreign language. So those are the only options available for nursing students, and that's a state requirement for the degree. It's nothing to do even with our own program, but for you to get an associate degree in nursing, those are your only options. So that's another thing that I see students do, is they self-advise. So when you get to those rules, you're not quite sure, I really recommend that you speak to an advisor, because we'd hate for you to take a class, waste your time and energy, and not be the one that you need. It does say Art 206, that's the Introduction to Fine Arts. It is that class, not ceramics, not art history. It is Art 206 for nursing students. Okay, so again, it doesn't seem like it makes much sense to you, but in Art 206, what you do is you learn how to view an object, whether it's a sculpture, a painting, and describe it, which is what you do with patients. You look at them and then you have to describe what it is that you see. You have to make judgments based on that. So we selected a specific art class, honestly, that would help you develop that observation skill. So that's why it can't be art history. It's not just, we don't just randomly pick them out of a hat. I know it seems like that to some students, but there is kind of a rhyme and reason to why certain courses are the courses that are required. Okay, so other clinical programs that we are going to start with are the ones that are also associate degree programs, because nursing is an associate degree. It is truly an associate degree. Actually, the classes that we have listed are what we call an associate of applied science, which is slightly different. Has just minor general education requirements that are not the same as nursing. For example, they don't require any fine art or Art 206, but there are some more specific clinical skills that they expect you to have in these particular programs that necessarily nursing did not require. Okay, so we'll go through those. And again, this will help you. The handout that we gave you is kind of a snapshot. We're going to go through each program, but you'll notice they're kind of outlined on your handout as well, so you can kind of go through that at the same time. So the first one is respiratory therapy, and the reason that I put that one next as your next possible option, it's the program that has the least number of classes that you will have to pick up in order to be eligible for them as well. All the classes that you see, if you look at your handout, you'll notice that the ASN classes that you have to have is English 101 and English 102. Both of those classes are also required for respiratory therapy. So the ones that you've already completed for nursing will just transfer over to what you require for respiratory. You don't have to take them again. In other words, those are the grades that you have for those will just transfer over to respiratory, and you're already 2 classes out of the way. The Biology 230 and 230 labs, same thing. Nursing requires those. If you've completed those for nursing, then those are also the requirements for respiratory therapy. Well, then you've met those requirements as well. So that's kind of what we're doing with every one of the programs today, is kind of looking at that. And again, the classes that you will have to pick up, though, that respiratory requires, that nursing does not, would be Biology 110, which is medical terminology, and Chemistry 107, which is Introduction to Chemistry. Now, does this mean if I want this as my plan B, Ms. Partain, you're telling me I have to change to respiratory therapy? No. I'm just saying consider these options, because everything has a benefit and everything has a consequence. Yes, this might be your quickest way to get to a plan B, but if you don't like snot, this is not a good program for you. So you want to look at other things besides, is this really something, I mean, this potentially could be your next job. It doesn't matter if the shortest route, if it's going to make you miserable, it doesn't really matter. So you want to consider that as well, okay? The other advantage of taking or changing to respiratory therapy, the Chemistry 107 is oftentimes required when you apply to other nursing programs. It's not required for ours, but it is required for other programs. So sometimes that actually helps nursing students in a whole different way, okay? These are the respiratory therapy courses, but again, as I said, sometimes general science is a better major change because it's almost so generic. It'll still let you take biology 110 and still allow you to take chemistry 107 so you can apply to respiratory therapy and then also nursing, but it reduces how many times you've changed your major. Okay, so you'll in your mind know, okay, I might be listed as general science, but I'm actually taking these courses, so I check have met the requirements for respiratory therapy. Okay, so that might be, again, you can apply to as many programs as you meet the prerequisites for. So you could have 3 or 4 programs if you want to. All right, other things to let you know about applying to respiratory therapy. The application packet is actually found online, which is unlike nursing. Nursing, you have to, and you can only get it in Nursing 101. So we do not post the application for the nursing program. However, all these other programs, we do. So you're going to find that on their program website or the applications, the instructions, and the forms that you have to download, as well as the submission information and deadlines and things of that nature. What is unique about their program application is, yes, you have the actual documents that you submit, but they also require that you go to a mandatory applicant meeting. And it is to give you more information about the program to make sure this is really what you want to do. We don't want you to get into something that you're going to go, oh my gosh, I had no idea they worked with ventilators and life support systems. It's too late once you've gotten into clinicals. We really want you to kind of have a better idea of what you're getting into before you commit for that amount of time. Their applications are due April 15th, which you're going to find most of the applications are due on tax day. We figured it was a good day for students to remember. If you are selected for this group, you actually will begin in the summer, which is unlike nursing as well. Nursing doesn't begin a class in the summer, but this program does. So if you submit on April 15th, if you're accepted, your class will actually begin, your program will begin in the summer. So that's something to consider. If you've already planned a cruise, you will not be excused from because your cruise, you will still be expected to be clinical students. So again, this is what I mean by think it all through to make sure this is really what you want to do. Okay, if you get into the program, this is kind of the pathway to graduation. You will be there at the start of the summer. You'll go to a fall semester, a spring semester. You'll actually finish in the summer semester, and then you will graduate. So it's relatively quick once you've got all those prerequisites out of the way. And again, that's why I put this first, not necessarily that it's ideal for a lot of people, but time-wise, it's one of the shorter associate degree pathways if you're transitioning to a Plan B. All right, so we have Nursing to Physical Therapy Assistant, or PTA program. Again, you'll see the number of the classes that we have listed for the nursing program very much match what is required for the PTA program, with the exception of these 3 additional classes. It also requires medical terminology, which is Biology 110. You'll have to take Physical Science 105, as well as Allied Health 109. And those are, again, are additional classes. Now, if you're looking at your handout, you can see the first column that we had was Associate Degree in Respiratory Therapy, and where it says Nursing 101 right next to it, if you kind of read down and across, the classes that you would be missing for respiratory would be Biology 110 and Chemistry 107. For PTA, which is where we are now, you would be missing Biology 110, Allied Health 109, and Physical Science 105. Okay, now let's look at this kind of critically, making you be critical thinkers. Your Plan B, hopefully you're wanting to open up as many options as you possibly can. Let's say you're open to any of these careers as an option. Most students want to have a full load of courses, in other words, full-time number of classes. If you change your major to general science, if you look at the classes that we have left there, and you wanted to do respiratory therapy and PTA, that is something you could do, because notice that both of them require Biology 110. So you're already one step closer in both of those programs. Chemistry 107 would pick you up for respiratory therapy, would also, again, offer you the option of possibly going to another program in another institution. You could pick up Physical Science 105, again, to meet PTA's requirement, and Allied Health 109. Basically, at that point, you have 11 credit hours. So you're almost to a full-time load, and you've actually now made yourself eligible for 2 programs. So it is very possible to actually apply to a number of programs, as long as, again, this is something that you can see yourself doing as a career. All right, so that's relatively short as far as the classes that you have to have for PTA as well. But what's unique about PTA, again, their application packet is available to you online. This is a new thing. PTAs do require students to have an observation period of time. But they want, again, kind of like what respiratory is doing with their mandatory meeting, they actually want you to see it in action to make sure this is really what you want to do, because it's a huge commitment. So part of their application process is that you will do observation time. However, what you have to do in order to get the form that will allow you to do observation is you will have to meet with the PTA faculty. Oh, goodness. All right. I'm really going slow. I'm sorry about that. So you'll have to meet with the faculty, and they will actually review your application, give you recommendations, and then if you meet their expectation for where you are, they will give you an observation form. You have to perform those observation hours, include the documentation as part of your application packet. It is also due April 15th, and their students also begin in the summer. So if you were selected, you would begin summer, fall, spring, summer, and then you would graduate. So it's, again, relatively short program. OTA, again, very similar process. The classes that will transfer, those general education classes for the most part, will transfer right over to OTA. The additional classes that you would have to pick up for OTA would be midterm, which you see a pattern. All of them so far have required you to have midterm, so that'd be a good one to pick up if you're not sure. It also requires Allied Health 109, and it requires, in addition to developmental psychology, that you pick up Intro to Psychology. OTA, if you're not familiar, is very psychology based. It is more about the mind in a strange way than it is about the body. It's about your ability to kind of motivate these people or these patients to optimize what they're physically capable of doing. So you have to understand psychology just as much as you do their ability to move. So that's also why there's so much more psychology required in OTA than in all the other programs. Okay, so very similar. Again, their applications are available to you online. You also have to perform observation hours for the OTA program, but their observation form currently is still part of that packet that you would download. So it doesn't require you to go to OTA faculty at this point to get the form and meet with them and that kind of thing. You're welcome to, but you don't have to do that. Unlike you do with PTA, you have to in order to get that observation form. Applications are due April 15th. Selected students do begin in the summer as well. It's a summer, fall, spring, summer, and actually part of the fall semester, because their accreditation requires so many hours of actual hands-on practice. There's no way to get them all the actual contact hours in the summer. So it kind of bleeds over like 2 weeks into the fall. So it's not actually a full fall semester, but we can't tell you that you graduate in the summer because you really don't. You will actually graduate in that fall. Okay, so that is the OTA program. Paramedic, also very similar. Even though it looks as though it has very few prerequisites, the one I want to point out that's kind of unique about paramedic is you have to be what we call an EMT first. So you have to take EMTP 100, which is an 8-hour credit course, and you, at the end of that course, are eligible to sit for your national exam. So you actually take a board exam. You'll take a written one as well as a skills one. So for a lot of students, it looks like one class, but it's actually a lot more work in some aspects, because then you have to go schedule a state exam and take it and pass it. You actually have to hold those cards to be eligible for the paramedic program. Okay, so it's not time-wise necessarily any longer, but a lot of times it's a little bit more work in some aspects for a lot of students. Applying to the program, the actual catalog describes to you what classes are listed. Their applications are not online. You have to get them from the program director. And the reason that is he needs to confirm that you actually have a national registry card. He doesn't want students applying and wasting their time when they really need to have registered for that EMTP 100 class. So to get an application, you will actually have to meet with Mr. Anderson or contact him via email, and if you meet those requirements, he can send you an application. Students for this particular program are selected various times. This is one of the only programs that we have that has a clinical program at night or in the day, and you tell them which one you want to be in. Now, the thing is, if you want the night one, you're night the whole way through. You can't pick and choose. But he ultimately runs 2 different levels at the same time, and it's because a number of who he has in his class are people who actually work for the fire department. So if they find out they're night shift people, then they're going to be a night paramedic class. If they're day shift people, then a day class. So that's actually a huge benefit to this class or this program that the other ones don't have. Their clinicals actually run 2 separate times. Okay. All right, nursing to pharmacy tech. Again, as you can see, we're starting to now, as we get further down into the listing of classes, have more classes that you have to take. that there's fewer that transfer directly over from nursing. And again, not that these aren't good programs. You may actually have some of these classes already, but if you were just a nursing student and you wanted to transfer over, you would have additional classes to pick up. MedTerm 109, Allied Health 109, Allied Health 116, which is dosage calculations, Pharmacy 102 and 102 Lab, which is like Introduction to Pharmacy Tech, and Pharmacy 104, which I believe, I don't remember the official name for that class, but that's also a precursor class to see if you really want to go into the Pharmacy Tech program. Then they have co-requisites that are additional to this particular degree that we had talked about. These are classes you can take at any time, don't have to necessarily be before you apply, but you have to have them to graduate, would be Computer Science 105, Speech 110, and Allied Health 105, which is Medical Ethics and Law. And those are additional classes at any time you could take those classes. All right, applying to Pharmacy Tech, like most of the classes, programs we have talked about, their application is found online. You can download those forms. The other advantage about Pharmacy Tech is we accept a new Pharmacy Tech clinical class every fall and every spring. So if you don't get in this time, well, then you can apply for the fall class. If you don't get this, so it gives you more options to apply, but you'll notice that we don't go in the summer. It is only fall and spring. You do have to have permission to enroll in Pharmacy 102 and 102 Lab, as well as the Pharmacy 104. And again, it's to make sure that you're on the right path, that you're not diving into those program classes when you haven't even taken medical terminology yet, because you're going to get way deep into it and then you'll be really lost. So it requires you to actually see an advisor so we can confirm, yes, you can take those classes. Nursing to medical assistant, as I said, medical assistant isn't necessarily a bad option, but notice that there are a number of more co-requisites that you have to take in order to apply. Biology 110, as you're starting to see a theme here, that's a good option for you if you're not sure what you want to do, but you want to open up your options. Additional co-requisites that you have to take for them, again, is CIS 105, Speech, Allied Health 109, again, dosage calculations, which is 116, Allied Health 115, which is pharmacology, and then Allied Health 105, again, medical ethics and law. So the other advantages for medical assistant, you can download your application packet. We accept a new class every fall and every spring. So that's very beneficial to a lot of students because you can, again, apply to as many programs as you are eligible for at the same time. So if you are qualified for all of them, you can apply for all these programs by whatever the deadline is. You definitely want to consult with the program director for medical assistant, and that would be Connie Winter. And the reason I say that is her program is very unique. She has what we call integrated program classes. There are some program classes you can actually take before you're in clinicals. And so it's kind of like special classes. She'll let you take laboratory procedures, for example, before you're actually in clinicals, because it's almost a didactic class that might actually help you before you get to clinicals. So she's able to do that with you. However, not all those classes are taught every semester. So you don't miss one when it's taught only in the fall. You need to meet with her so she can make sure she gets you in those integrated classes when it's appropriate. All right. I know we're running out of time. I'm going to quickly hurry. Associate degree in General Science is the Allied Health option. We actually have two options, but this is the one that most likely will be the most beneficial for most students who are coming up with a plan B. The Allied Health option allows you to earn an associate degree, but it does not have a clinical component. So it's all classwork. It's all lecture material lab. But at the same time, that means you can't go to work with it. It's going to help you meet your prerequisites for other classes or other programs that you're trying to do so you can meet multiple objectives. It helps you transfer to another institution. If you decide after all this, I'm just going to get a bachelor's degree in nursing, then go general science, pick up those other prerequisites you need for bachelor science in nursing, and you can do that and still be covered here at BIPC. So it's a good kind of catch-all umbrella degree, but please remember, you really can't find work with it. That's the one thing I think students think, oh, good, I have a degree in general science. It might as well be general studies. There's very little work you can get with it, but it helps you progress academically and financial aid-wise. So in most instances, if a student chooses a general science degree, their intentions are to transfer to a four-year institution, maybe for a program we don't have, like rad tech or dental hygiene or something we don't have here, but you wanted to get some of your sciences here and then transfer those over. So for that, we usually recommend general science. And again, to apply to any other clinical program, that's a good option when you're trying to meet multiple objectives. We do have some short programs. And these are not degrees. Remember, the ones we just talked about are all degree programs. These are what we call certificates or technical diplomas. The primary difference that you find with these, they don't have as much general education requirements. You don't have to have 2 Englishes, and they just need a real baseline because the skills they're going to teach you are very career focused. You're going to learn about phlebotomy, how to draw blood, how to sterilize your instruments, those kinds of things. They're not going to spend a lot of ancillary time on all these other more global kind of concepts. So for phlebotomy, not that you don't have the nursing classes that you've completed on your transcript, but the ones that will be utilized for the phlebotomy program would be your biology, A&P 1, and the lab, and your developmental psychology. Those will transfer over because those are required for psychology, for phlebotomy. But again, you will have to pick up medical terminology, Allied Health 109. Allied Health 102 and 102 lab is the introduction to phlebotomy. That's where you're going to practice sticking each other in the lab. If you don't like blood, then you shouldn't do phlebotomy. That's not a good option for you. But we want students to see that. It's amazing how many students don't realize that they deal with needles in that particular program, and they don't realize it until they get to that class. So those are those prerequisites that you have to take. The additional co-requisite for phlebotomy, you'll notice at the very bottom, is computer science. You have to have introduction to computer science, which is CIS 105. Again, that's a co-requisite, so you can take that anytime before you graduate. To apply to the phlebotomy program, you will again open up the application packet, which is found online. We accept a new phlebotomy class every fall and every spring. It is a competitive entry program. Again, their process is unique because it has short turnaround time. There's different things that she expects you to have done. Observation time is one of those things, but you get that in your packet when you download it. Okay, and you have to have permission to enroll in that Allied Health 102, 102 lab class. Again, it's just for us to make sure that you've taken the term and you're really where you need to be before you get too hands-on deep into you're actually sticking other people with a needle. So we just want to make sure that that's where you need to be. Nursing to MOS, which is medical office specialist. What we're seeing probably being the most popular venue would be medical coding. And we also have medical transcription, but we're finding that less students, as well as employers, are not seeking as many medical transcriptionists. So medical coding tends to be the favored pathway. You'll notice that, again, you'll have to pick up a number of additional courses. Medical terminology, medical ethics and law, which is Allied Health 105, Allied Health 109, which is that intro class to health safety and systems, Allied Health 115, Allied Health 207, which is advanced medical language. So it's an advanced medical terminology. As you can imagine, as a medical office specialist, you do a lot of paperwork. You're dealing with a lot of charts. You're filing insurance claims and those kinds of things. We have CIS 105, CIS 115, which is that application of software. You will actually write memos for physicians' offices or notify patients when their insurance was rejected or those kinds of things. So you have to have some office type skills. And then you have MOS 107, which is office procedures. So we explain to you things like, what your appropriate realm of communication would be with the patient and their families. To apply, you don't actually have an application that you download, but we do have the course listing for you in the catalog. The application is received through the program director, which her name is Charlotte Ware. So you can email Ms. Ware, let her know where you are in the process, and then she will tell you when it's an appropriate time to fill out an application. We don't want you to fill it out too early. We really want you to fill out when you're really about to apply to clinicals. You do want to consult with this program director because, again, not all classes are taught every semester. And if you stay in touch with her, she can go, oh, no, don't forget to take MOS 107 because it's only taught in the fall or it's only taught in the spring, so you don't get off track. It may require certain permissions to enroll some of these MOS prefix classes. So, again, that's another reason why you need to stay in touch with Ms. Ware. Surg Tech, surgical technology, is yet another option. Again, it is a technical diploma, so you'll notice that things like English and math are not required as a prerequisite. It also has additional courses that you'll need to take: Biology 110, Allied Health 105, Allied Health 109, and Allied Health 116. But if you want to notice at the bottom, there are three extra co-requisites for Surg Tech. But as a nursing student, you've already had Micro 201 and 201 Lab. So really, the only extra prerequisite co-requisite you would have to then pick up is Allied Health 115. Okay? And that would be for surgical technology. Their applications are found online. Their deadline is also April 15th. They only select a class that would begin in the summer. Okay? So if you were accepted into their program, it would be a summer, fall, spring, and then you would graduate. again, a reduced time because it's a technical diploma. You don't have nearly as much material to cover. All right, I appreciate your attention, and I hope this was helpful for you. This, again, was brought to you by our Student Success Initiatives here at BIPC. If you have any questions, just feel free to contact us.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.